Hey everybody, Happy New Year, almost Happy New Year. The final University of Nevada, Las Vegas, Oakland Raiders NFL Stadium Joint Use Agreement was released. It's part of the agenda for the January 4th Regents meeting, a special meeting called specifically on the matter of the stadium and this joint use agreement. UNLV Regents have to approve it. They get two cracks at it. First to read it and then make notes and ask questions, and then for that presentation, and then the final meeting is to really go over the agreement again, presumably with any changes, and then decide whether or not they want to support it or not. I have to tell you right now, folks, for all the money that was spent on lawyers by UNLV, over $200,000, the document that I just read is awful. And UNLV Regents will be fools to sign it, and I'll tell you why. Make it very simple. First of all, it has the document UNLV paying more in rent than it would anticipate paying. The reason is this. The law says that UNLV should not pay more than operational costs, right? And yet, get this. They rewrote the agreement so that they have UNLV paying those operational costs regardless of what level they may be. The spirit of the law was, hey, look, UNLV isn't supposed to get stuck in a situation where it's paying an exorbitant amount to be in the stadium. That was the whole idea, okay? But the way the agreement is written, UNLV will have to pay those costs. And then get this, they didn't even know what the costs were at the time that they were discussing the agreement. Why do I say that so boldly? Because the way the final agreement is written, it specifically says, hey, we don't know what the operational cost will be right now, but as we get closer to the completion of the stadium, we will, and we'll get back to you, UNLV. This is the Raiders saying that to UNLV. Raiders are Stadco, stadium company, all right? So that means, think about it, that means that the final operating costs would or could, because there's nothing in the language to stop it from having within it any cost overruns associated with a stadium project, if they're telling you just to wait, all right? So it's like, hey, UNLV is saying, okay, but here's the other kicker. That cost that I recited to you, that UNLV is being asked to pay in the agreement, they didn't specifically call it rent. It does not in the language say, this is the rent you will pay. It's very slick, okay? It's very slick. It just says pay the cost, but it doesn't say we're gonna call that rent. So UNLV can wind up in a situation where there's a disagreement and they wind up paying more than what they believe they have to pay with respect to the costs, which they don't know what that's going to be, all right? That's just one problem. Here's the other problem, okay? The situation I just described would be okay if the parties followed the original discussions in the Southern Nevada Tourism and Infrastructure Committee, which is, hey, UNLV is supposed to get a $221 million payment. Where that came from, I don't precisely know, but that's the number that was presented in the document that was written by Jeremy Aguillo of Applied Analysis and based on the Las Vegas Sands Majestic model that was released in May of 2016. This document I'm talking about was released in June, all right? And I have a link to it in my in this video and also on my more detailed blog, of which there's a link to below, okay? Hey, now, get this, okay? Get this. The $221 million was supposed to be paid. There was no condition. But in the joint use agreement, the final one, there are three conditions. In other words, hey, UNLV, we have this offset revenue area. This is what the Raiders are saying, UNLV, in the agreement. We have this offset revenue area, right? But you're not going to get that offset straight away. We have to first pay our capital contribution, which is $75 million, and then there's this debt service reserve up to $9 million, okay? And then you'll get your money. Well, think about that. Right now, the stadium tax revenue monies that are coming in are already so low because of the rate, and also the occupancy is secondary, but the rate is just smaller than it should be. It should be at 1.4%. It's at 88/100, so 1%. I've talked about that before, right? Okay, the rate is not bringing enough money, which means you don't have enough money to cover your debt service for your bond issues. You're going to have to dip into your reserve, you know, or you're going to have to wait for the reserve to grow. You're going to have to get it some kind of way. What does that all add up to? It means UNLV will not get any money. You have to put $75 million in the capital contribution. Then you have the debt service reserve, and you have this deficit problem. So UNLV is going to wind up without that guaranteed, or so we thought, $221 million from the Stadium Authority. They can then use to offset the costs that they're going to have to pay with respect to the stadium, UNLV. So suddenly, this is not a good-looking situation for UNLV. The point of the stadium was to make UNLV a power football school. That was the idea. That's the idea, so I thought. The reality is that UNLV goes into this situation $4 million in deficit, and it has to ask the question, and other people have asked, hey, look, if we go into this situation with a new stadium, what would be financially better? And the idea was to provide it with a nice little cushion, a cocoon. They could have said, they being the Raiders and UNLV, hey, let's look over at the Eagles model at the link, as they call it, with Temple University. The new lease that the Eagles are pitching at Temple calls for Temple to cough up $12 million up front and then pay $2 million a year. You apply that to the Raiders UNLV situation, that's 30 years, you're looking at $72 million, right? So you have $72 million here, $221 million in revenue offsets. That would have been enough to make UNLV whole. That would have given them a nice cushion. But when you come in, you not just put these conditions on it, but you're already in a situation where you have your stadium hotel tax revenue not bringing enough money to cover your bond issue of not just $750 million, but $700 million. All right, when you have that situation, and then you're saying we have to, you know, have our debt service reserve replenished, and we may have to use it. If you're forcing UNLV to wait for that and wait to get out of this deficit situation, it's not going to see $221 million. And Lord knows when it's actually going to see it. So in order to make UNLV whole, in order to make this agreement fair, those conditions need to be removed. And they need to figure out another way. If they can't do it that way, they need to start all over again. You can go through all the other parts of this agreement. You can talk about the locker rooms, you can talk about the branding and all that. But the bottom line is, can UNLV not just make money, but will it make more money at this stadium than it will in its situation at Sam Boyd? And if the answer is no, you don't do it. If the answer is the same, you don't do it. Because there's insurance costs and everything else, all right? But to go into this situation and then say we don't have the costs broken down, but then get this, they discussed the costs at the SNTIC. In fact, the operating cost window or template was said to be just over $21 million, according to the same document that I recited to you that Jeremy Arguello put together, who works for Applied Analysis, the June document of 2016. $21 million in operating expenses, but they hadn't broken out the UNLV part. They didn't break out the UNLV revenue part, and Jeremy admitted that in the document. It says, hey, there's some questions about UNLV here that are not answered. But he mentioned that. But he did include $221 million that UNLV is supposed to get. Where that number came from, I'm sure UNLV President Lynn Jessup knows. But to go into this situation, ask the regents of UNLV to sign this document right now, makes them look like fools. There you go. See ya.